Chronic diseases such as autoimmune encephalitis affect health-related quality of life of not only the patients, but also of their families and caregivers. Today, HESA will talk to one of these caregivers. We are talking to Joli Lewis, whose husband has a form of autoimmune encephalitis called Hashimoto's encephalopathy. Good evening, Joli.
Hi there.
Thank you for sitting down with me today. HESA is anxious to tell the story of the effect of chronic rare disease has on the whole family, but most of all the caregivers. I'm going to start out by asking you, how long has your husband been diagnosed?
About not quite a year now.
Okay.
Yeah, not quite a year. He's on his 10th neurologist.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. And how's he doing now?
He is doing much better. He has had 2 Rituxan infusions now, and is due for a 3rd one in December. Things are much improved.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad to hear it. I am curious of what you went through to get him diagnosed.
Oh, Lordy. So, so we lived in Alaska. We're originally from Arkansas. We were living in Alaska, and he was working as an executive vice president at a college. And he had a couple of things that were seizure type activities, and we worried about it and started going to the doctor. We got referred to a neurology clinic in Anchorage. And let's see, we saw 1 in the town we lived in and 5 in Anchorage. The doctor there gave him a diagnosis of hemiplegic migraines and epilepsy. And then he wanted to send him to Seattle for some testing, the one they do, the EEG inpatient.
EEG, yep.
Okay, yeah, that one. And they didn't have the capabilities to do that in Alaska. So then we just went ahead and moved outside and went to Joplin, Missouri, because we'd lived there before and my job I could do easily there. And then we got the opportunity to move down here to close to Little Rock. So let's see, that started in 2016 when we started really noticing symptoms. And then when we moved to Missouri, got with a neurologist and talked to him about it, got a referral, and that was a whole process to a specialist who has written on Hashimoto's encephalopathy.
Oh, that's wonderful, I hope.
Well, we thought it was. We get there, and the guy walks in and says, your husband's chart or your chart says you have epilepsy, and I don't work with epilepsy. And I was like, okay, that's not what this is. It's something different. We think it's Hashimoto's encephalopathy. And he said, did you Google that?
Oh, the famous line.
Yes, and we Googled you as well.
Yeah.
We found you by your articles. So anyway, I mean, he just starts off and says, you don't have Hashimoto's encephalopathy. You just don't. And we're looking at it going, okay, we have every single symptom except coma, and, we didn't think psychosis. There are some times that he feels something on his feet and that's it. But we were like, he has every other symptom, including the elevated TPO. And let's see, what else? Oh, he asked if we had, if my husband had family members who had autoimmune diseases. And my husband said, yes, my dad's diabetic. And he says, that's not an autoimmune disease.
Oh my gosh.
We were like, do you read the magazine you got published in? And then my husband said, well, my mother has Parkinson's. Oh yeah, that doesn't count either. We were floored. And I kept everything this way. I had notebooks of medical records. I had one that was Alaska, and I mean, and I had my bag of notebooks with me, and went to leave the office after saying my husband didn't have Hashimoto's and said, but keep your wife. She's a great organizer.
Oh my,
Mhm.
how degrading.
Yeah. Um, yeah. We did not enjoy that experience. The doctor who had referred him had Googled it while we were sitting in his office and said, well, I can start you on a trial of prednisone. And my husband said, sure, let's do it. Within 3 days, 4 days, I had my husband back.
Oh
He
my
was
gosh.
back, personality and
Amazing.
everything. And that was another thing. We went to this doctor and he said, well, it doesn't react that quickly. That's just not. And I came on the board a while back and asked the question that we were told it doesn't react this quickly. What's the experience? And people were like, no, it does. And so that doctor said, you got to take him off. He doesn't have it. And he took him off. And within, 6, 8 weeks, he started declining again. And so we moved to Arkansas. We got with a doctor who is also a specialist at University of Arkansas Medical Sciences. And she walked in the room and she said, you have Hashimoto's encephalitis. And we just went, praise the Lord, we
Yeah,
finally have someone.
it's a matter of you don't care what the diagnosis is. Just give me a diagnosis and treat me. Treat
Well,
us.
and when we
Yes.
went back to the doctor in Missouri, the one that had referred him up to, I keep saying us because it is us,
Of course, that's the whole deal. Yeah, it's the
we
whole
went,
deal.
we went back to that doctor and he said, he said it's not Hashimoto's. And I said, okay, fine. Think outside the box. What could there be where it's not just plain epilepsy? Let's think outside the box. And we didn't get anything. His last note, still have this one, says, and the Lewises were pleased with their visit and the outcome. And it said, he could, oh, you're doing better. In 6
Oh my
months, you
gosh.
haven't had any seizures. You go back to driving. You go back to work if you want.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But we have a great doctor now. We love her.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy that there was at least a positive outcome after all that. And it seems to be most Hashimoto encephalopathy patients go through the same thing that you just went through. They go through numerous doctors to get a diagnosis and get some treatment that will actually help them in the long run. It's amazing. I mean, and it's not a story that's not familiar to me. That's the sad part.
Yeah.
Well, how does his chronic rare disease affect you?
Well, so when we lived in Alaska, I worked, but he was the, major, he brought home most of the money. And when he started really going downhill, he couldn't work anymore. Our adult son, our oldest son, we asked him to move in with us. He was, living out and doing his own thing. We asked him to move in with us, one, because financially it was getting difficult. And two, there were times that, he had focal seizures and he just disappeared, just absolutely disappeared. And I just needed the help. And so he's still with us. We moved from, Alaska to Missouri and down here to Arkansas. There was a point when we were in Missouri that my son and I talked about putting the cameras in the house and having it on our phones. My husband finally told me one time, and it's been a couple of years ago, but he said, you've got to stop crying every time something like this
Oh, I
happens.
know. Oh, it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking.
And now I'm at the point, and it's been this way. I talk, and I just go, it just is what it is.
But it's so hard because it never ends.
No, and I was telling someone I feel like I've been fighting for years, and fighting doctors is not easy
No, it
at
isn't.
all. And I
Y-
know my stress level is higher. I know I'm quicker to snap. Um, there are times that he seems to be doing great, and it's almost like you flip a switch, and he's just not the same. His affect will go flat. He is very concrete thinking at that point. So you might make a joke, and it's completely offensive to him. And I don't know when that's going to happen sometimes. So
I
that's a tough one.
I understand totally that the emotional part of HE is very hard to understand. It's hard to understand for the person going through it, and even harder to understand for the caregivers because they don't know what's going
And
to happen next.
one of the biggest things I think hardest for me is, of course, they referred him to a psychologist to do all the psychologists that they do in the testing. And of course, I say, of course, he came out with the diagnosis of somatic disorder, somatoform disorder. It's all in his head. He's making all this up. And part of this, I'm a professional counselor. I have a master's degree. My husband has a master's degree, but I counsel for a living. I know what these diagnoses are. I know what's going on. And, the guy he just dismissed me and what I said and just said, well, he has a somatoform disorder. I'm trying to think what he gave him some kind of diagnosis. And then he was like, and by the way, my dad works with that. So if you need a referral.
Oh, that's so heartbreaking because you being in that profession, I mean, the person that goes into the doctor and they tell them, psychiatric, you need to go, somewhere else. It's even more difficult for them because they don't know where to go with it. They go and then they don't get the right treatment. I shouldn't even get started on it. But anyway.
Yeah, we can get on a soapbox there.
Yeah, yeah, because that's such a pit to get into.
It
I don't
is.
know any
And
other way to put it.
no. And, with the increased stress and my husband saying, you've got to stop crying every time this happens. When we moved to Missouri, I remember, I don't know, it was a month or two after we moved there. And I was just at that point. And I remember it was raining and I went outside barefooted. My husband at that point was like, we're in Missouri now. There's snakes. You can't just go out there in the dark. We didn't have that problem in Alaska. But I remember going out there and I went to the back we were on 2 acres and just screamed at God. And I know he's a big guy and he can take my anger. And I had to say, there's the why me, why him, why us.
I
And of
understand
course,
that.
there's not, you don't get that light bulb from God where sometimes you just have to keep walking through it.
Yep, I understand totally. And it's hard to explain to someone that has not been through it. It's very hard to explain those feelings and those emotions because it's never ending. You can't walk away from it. It's there constantly. And that was, one of my next questions for you was, did it affect your work, your income, which obviously you already touched on that, how this disease affected that part. If you want to explain a little bit more, you're free to explain.
So my husband also had disability insurance through work. And they fought us. Aflac was short-term disability, and they said, sure, you have it, not a problem. And he ended up with a year's worth of disability from them. But the private company, Unum, we fought with them from 2018 until we finally just did a settlement about 4 months ago.
Oh my gosh.
They refused. They read the doctor's reports and said, he doesn't have anything that is wrong with him. And we said, well, you didn't do an outside medical review, and they said, well, sorry, forget it. And that was really tough because I'm fighting them as well. Social Security, because I work in the mental health profession, I know that typically people will try twice on their own, then they'll hire an attorney and finally get something. Well, I said, no, we're hiring an attorney to begin with. And they didn't, it was more, I think, going to Social Security and you had an attorney already that kind of did something, but he got his disability from Social Security on the first try.
Oh, wonderful. That's such a relief right there.
It's not nearly as much as he was making, but it's
No, but it's
something.
something. It's something.
Yes.
Yes. And there's one part of that, getting the Social Security, finally, disability. I remember for myself, as you know, I have Hashimoto's encephalopathy myself, as you can tell how I talk. But when I got that paper declaring me disabled, it was a very emotional moment because I felt like I am disabled. Somebody's telling me, in the back of your mind, you keep thinking, I'm all right, I'm all right. But here's this paper saying you aren't. And it's emotional. I'm sure it was emotional for you too.
And my husband has not driven a vehicle in 3 years because of the seizures. And, there are times we go out and he's like, let me drive. I just want to drive. And I'm like, okay, no. And you can't do this to me because now I'm telling you, you can't do something. And he said, he said, a lot of times this is a joke. I have to make it a joke for me. So that my brain is okay with it. And I said, and when you do that, it makes my emotions go wild because now I am parenting you. And that's been a difficult thing as well.
It's hard. It's hard on a relationship. It just is.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
hard. And it's hard for the whole family now. You've got your son, you said, living with you. And how does that affect him? It must take a toll also.
It's funny because something will happen and we will both just kind of look at each other and just be like, understand. And we know that I hate to call it checked out. We've just called it episodes. That's just our name
It's a good
for
way
it.
to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they don't fit, seizures. They don't fit any one category. So it's just been episodes, but we'll just look at each other and we know, we have another son that's here and a daughter, and they both are like, okay, dad's having an episode and we just have to keep talking, and he'll eventually
Come
join
back.
in. Mhm.
So you have a great support system then with your children, it sounds like.
Since we moved, that was one of the reasons for moving back to Arkansas. We thought moving to Joplin, we'd be close enough. Well, it's still 4 hours from where our kids are. And so COVID actually was good for us. I was able to keep working as a licensed counselor in Missouri for a Missouri company, seeing people who lived in Missouri via telehealth. And we
Great.
were able to move here and I was able to get licensed in the state of Arkansas. And so I went into private practice down here, which has been great, except we've been trying to buy a house. And guess what? Self-employed people don't get houses very easily.
It's hard. It's
Yes.
hard. I understand that.
I just started a second job basically. So I work 4 days a week and not 40 hours or anything because it's private practice, but it is full time. And I work 36 hours. I work 3/12s, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at a local psychiatric hospital.
Unbelievable. I don't know how you can do it with the emotional stress that you live with. And I know I have friends that are in the same practice as you, and it's emotional stress from the job itself. So you've got it double, hitting you.
I have no problem saying I have my own mental health counselor. I think everyone can benefit from counseling. I am a counselor, so that sounds kind of self-serving,
No,
but
I believe it. I agree with you totally on
I
that.
have, right after we moved to Missouri, I found a good counselor, and I have seen her ever since. That was 2019. So
Good.
it's, 2021, and I love her and I see her weekly, because I need somebody, that I
Yeah.
can, what we call word vomit.
Well, that makes total sense to me. That's my language. Has it affected your health at all? I know it's stress related, mentally, it's a lot of stress. I mean, has it affected your health in general? Do you think
Um,
going through this?
yeah, there are some things. So I have migraines and have had to switch medications, and that's been a balance trying to find the work, the what works in that. Um, and I've actually, this sounds really bad, I have put on some weight, which has its own health problems. But
That-
there,
That's
you know, you,
stress.
you can't just jump up and let's run and, go, I don't know, kayaking, because my husband's afraid to do that, because what if he has an episode when he's in a boat by himself, you
I
know?
understand that. I totally do. And it affects you no matter how you look at it. The whole picture affects you one way or another. That's why caregivers, they do not get enough notice. I don't think of what they do, what it takes to take care of a chronically ill person. It's a lot. It's just a lot.
I think for me, there's been a few, physical health things. It has been mostly mental health, that has been the absolute hardest. Especially, COVID came and nobody is meeting or greeting, and that was very difficult. Trying to develop a support system outside of family, so that they don't get everything.
Exactly. I understand that totally because COVID caused everybody to be so isolated. And when you're isolated in a situation like that with somebody who's chronically ill, you're never away from it.
No, you're not.
I
You're
know.
working from home, and
Yeah, you
yeah.
just don't get away from it. So
No.
that's really difficult. I give you so much credit for doing what you've been doing and handling it the way you handle it.
Well, and here's the thing. We've been married, it was 30 years in August. He's my life partner. We have been best friends. We were best friends and we got married. He's still my best friend.
Oh,
The conversations aren't the way they used to be. He can't follow um, details. And so we can't have a lot of these in-depth conversations that we used to have. Um, yeah.
I will tell you from my own experience, I've been diagnosed for 10 years, that it gets better with the right treatments. Takes a long time, takes a while, but it does get better. That life partner you have, it's going to be your best friend again. He'll be there. He'll be there holding those long conversations with you. It happens. So just keep looking up.
And I do my best with that. He is getting better. Like I said, there are still times where, he doesn't have the abstract thinking, but it's getting better.
Well, I'm glad. I'm so glad to hear that. Is there anything that you would like to share with us before we end that I haven't touched on or?
Um, I would say for people, it's tough. You really have to fight for the person you're caring for. They can't fight for themselves, and it's exhausting. And there are going to be times where you're going to scream at God, or you're gonna be totally exhausted and feel like you can't go on. And that's okay to feel that way. It is totally okay. Um, make sure you get your own support, because that person that maybe has been a support for you, like my husband, can't be your support anymore. So you
That's
have to find support, but you also have to remember it's okay to say, I need help.
that's such good advice, because the one thing caregivers seem to do is forget that they need help and support also, and they need to take time for themselves. And I do realize that's easy to say, to take time for yourself, but it's so important.
That's something with what I do. I preach self-care. And then I say, I'll get a membership at Massage Envy. I'll have to go once a month because I'm paying. And it's
There
been
you
4
go.
months. It's been 4 months since I went.
That's wonderful. I love it.
Well, you tell yourself this is what you're going to do for your self-care, and you have to do it because you're paying monthly. However, I haven't been in 4 months because I can't find the time.
I get it. Well, how can you with all the hours you're putting in?
Well, I've picked up my new self-care that I'm doing because it's fun. I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and kickboxing.
Oh, you're kidding. I've always thought that was so interesting. I could,
Well, I don't like going to the gym. It feels useless to me. It's boring. And I said, well, what can I do that's going to be fun? I'll anticipate going, and it might be useful someday. Who knows?
so do you practice at home?
They won't let me. I don't understand that one.
I don't know, but to me, that would get rid of a lot of stress.
It absolutely does. It does.
I can just feel my leg kicking out.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
But
I
they
love
won't,
it.
they won't let me practice here. I
What's
can't get
wrong
any
with them?
partners.
Well, I have to say thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. It's just so important to get the story out about caregivers and the loved ones of people that are, they're taking care of the most important job in their life, taking care of these chronically ill people. And they just don't get the notice that they should get and the understanding. And we're so appreciative of that you took the time to do this for us.
Well, I appreciate being asked and you letting me tell my story, our story. It's not mine, it's ours, you know, and that's just, it is what it is what I get by with a lot of the
It
time.
is, it is what it is. I like that. I really do. Well, thank you so much. And I will be seeing you in the groups, I'm sure.
Yes, you will.
And give a hug to your husband for me.
I sure will. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.